Good morning and welcome back to the One Celtic Fans View. Before we get started, remember that we do have the Amazon shop where you can get Celtic gift ideas and the run up to Christmas. And I'm going to update that again today because there is over 298 items just in this one section alone of the One Celtic Fans View shop. And you can get everything from hats to Celtic scarves to chains. Anything that you want really that's Celtic related, you can get it on this site. It makes it easy for you if you're looking for Christmas presents rather than searching through the whole of Amazon. What I've done, I've put everything that's connected to Celtic all in the one place for you. And if you want a Kyogo t-shirt for your favourite love, you can get it here. So a big shout out to everyone who has subscribed to the channel over the last couple of days. We are at 19,887, an absolutely fantastic number to be heading to the 20,000 a little bit earlier than what I thought, but can we do it before Wednesday? Maybe not, but keep an eye on the lives because hopefully on one of the lives it'll be when we hit the 20,000, and I am absolutely honoured that we have hit. We're getting closer to that 20,000. Honestly, I'm so lucky that I get to do this on a daily basis, and it's just a Celtic fan living the dream on YouTube. Anyway, let's get into some Celtic news this morning because there's lots to talk about. Before we want to talk about ultimately the Celtic game this week is the massive game against Club Brugge in the Champions League. Celtic have had a good start to the Champions League, let's say. We'll miss out one game, but what we will do is we'll look at the results that Celtic have had over the first four games at the halfway point in this year's Champions League format, a brand new format, and then we'll look at the Club Brugge and we'll see how they've done in the Champions League, knowing that they're just 1 point behind us in the Champions League table. So it's still all to play for. A Celtic win could take them up to 10 points, but before that, we need to talk about a couple of things about the game at the weekend and some of the not nice bits of it. And also, I want to talk about ex-Celtic players that don't talk up the chance to move to Celtic. And basically, there's one ex-Celtic player in Packie Bonner that's talking down Lennon Miller moving to Celtic. But before then, we'll talk about Adam Ida. Adam Ida was faced with glitter bombs. It wasn't really glitter bombs, it was 50 pence pieces, pound coins, and whatever other change that Hearts fans. Now, I've always said that Hearts it's always been a worst away ground. It's always been worse than the Rangers game. I can remember being at Hearts many times. In fact, there's a picture up here. Yeah, there's a picture up there with me and Tony Watt. Not Tony Watt, Tony. Oh, Jesus. Anyway, let's move on. Adam Ida, he scored a couple of cracking goals, but he was absolutely pelted with coins and people chucking stuff at him. Hearts away has always been a terrible ground. It says, is this acceptable? If it was Celtic fans, and there was another incident at Hearts yesterday, and the reason I'm talking about the Hearts fans and the fact that they were doing this, and people say, you were singing your songs. Well, it came to light yesterday that Hearts have made a public apology. And not for the coin throwing, no, not for the coin throwing. Now, I know personally that there was many fans from Belfast who were at the game on Saturday, and they lived through the troubles in the 80s, and they put an apology after Michael Stone was displayed in the stadium. And it explains why the full songbook was then released by the Celtic fans during that game. And I make no apologies for the Green Brigade and the rest of the fans at that game. Why should they? I know guys that were personally affected by the troubles in the 80s with members of their family, and to have Michael Stone put up in all his glory, as you say, jam tarts at Love Holidays, my mate Michael's first game in years. Here's an old photo of him coming through the gates, the turnstiles, #jam tarts. Now, we all know what Michael Stone did back in the day. I can remember my gran going absolutely mental about it when it was on the news, when he entered the cemetery. And that's all I'm going to give them the time of day for, because, Hearts are a terrible club. They insisted that the social media service had been abused, and several photos have been circulating online whose accounts have been deleted on request from Twitter. Hearts have went out and said that they want the accounts taken down of them promoting a terrorist. And let's just say all that. And here comes the incoming, you are a terrorist supporting club, you support terrorists in Ireland, you support terrorists in Palestine. Bugger off, a lot of yous. Anyway, let's move on to before we talk about the Club Brugge, let's talk about Packie Bonner. And I'm all for talking up anyone coming to Celtic, but it seems that Packie Bonner took to the air, as he does. And is it just me, or are Celtic fans kind of fed up of ex-Celtic players talking down Celtic sometimes and talking down the chances of players coming to Celtic and what they can actually achieve, when fans that pay their money week in, week out, and fans that have been going to games for absolutely years, want nothing for the best for the club. We've been linked with Lennon Miller over the last couple of weeks, and Packie Bonner says that the Celtic transfer could be a mistake for Lennon Miller. Any transfer to Celtic could be a mistake, as we've seen over the years. I mean, look at Alexander Bernabe. It was a complete waste of money. If you look at David Turnbull, we managed to get $3 million for him back, but he's not saying it's because they're not going to be good enough. Concerned Pat Bonner said he reckons that Lennon Miller faces limiting game time if he leaves Motherwell for Celtic, and he pointed to Luke McCowan as an example. Luke McCowan, who was the captain up in Dundee and came to Celtic, and he's now finding himself on the bench a bit more than what he maybe wanted to. But in the modern day of it being a squad game and looking to the future, Packie Bonner goes on to say, look, it would be maybe the wrong thing for him to do, with the fact that Liverpool, and this is where it gets ridiculous, this is where his comment now gets ridiculous, because he goes on to say, with Liverpool and Southampton reported showing interest in the 4 million rated Liverpool man, he reckons that the Wonder Kid would be severely limited in his time if he follows McCowan in the footsteps to Brendan Rodgers. He has an absolutely fantastic midfield as it is, and McCowan left Dundee on deadline day and has just made 2 starts for the Hoops. Asked if Miller would get into the Celtic team, Paddy Bonner says probably not. When Luke McCowan came to Celtic, it made a huge impact, but he never looked out of place. It suits the player that Brendan Rodgers wants. But ultimately, they're all training together on a daily basis. Pat Bonner goes on to say, he says they probably train and play together. He says, but if you're a little bit off and you don't make the squad, I think they have options, you're right. But Lennon Miller is a brilliant player with a great ability on the ball and a great passer of the ball. And you could end up not getting in the squad. That would be a shame, because he's not going to get games, and he's not going to get games that are critical. If he moves to Liverpool, he's not going to get games. He's not going to walk into the first team game. If he goes to a Southampton, he's not going to walk straight into the first team, right? And I think that Pat Bonner should also have said that, just to balance the out a bit. I think that if you're going to say that he's not going to get into the Celtic first team. The Celtic first team, the midfield players that we have just now, are not going to be there forever. Now, Brendan Rodgers has always spoke about a football player, and we've all said that it looks like if Celtic do go for him, there's a hope that they'll be loaned back to Motherwell so that it doesn't impede his progress as a football player towards the end of the season. And then this is why I think it's good that Celtic would do the deal just now, because Brendan Rodgers spoke a lot last summer. You can remember when we were in America and the interviews with Brendan Rodgers in America, and Brendan said, look, I want to get the players in early, because you need the players to get the pre-season. You need to get them in and get them playing and get the tactics. It's the time that they can mould the team and mould them into the way that we're going to play for the whole season. If you don't get someone in during and before pre-season starts, it means that they've got to then play catch-up, and then they're not settled into the team. And that's what's happened with Luke McCowan. You never know. But there is fantastic players that he knows are sitting in front of him, but they're not going to be there forever. And this is my point. When Pat Bonner says, look, don't go to Celtic because you're not going to get game time. Well, so you're telling him to go to Liverpool, he's not going to get game time. He'll get loaned out to Middlesbrough or some other club like that where he'll get some game time. You know, and then ultimately, will he then get back into the team? I just think that if you want to talk up Scottish football, and if we want the teams in Scotland to bring in through as much youngsters as you can. We need to talk up the game in Scotland and stop telling youngsters that they're not going to get game time in the SPFL, and then that's what heads them down south. People like Pat Bonner and other ex-Celtic players that do that on a consistent basis are not only doing the club a discredit, but they're doing the Scottish Football League a discredit. And I think, for one, everyone knows that I think that the SPFL should be expanded so that it gives us a better opportunity and more games to actually play the youth players. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about it, because I'm sure this story is going to go on and on and on until Lennon Miller, Motherwell, ultimately decide who they're going to sell him to. Anyway, back to the Champions League. It's a fantastic time of year for Celtic to still be involved in the Champions League and games that actually mean something. This point last year in the Champions League, we knew that we were all but out and there would be no progress in the Champions League. This year, we've amassed more points than we've had in a very, very long time in the Champions League, which is all good for Celtic because it means that the cash is rolling in. Yep, the cash is rolling into Celtic with the opportunity to get to the last 16 in that little extra pot of cash, which would be 9.2 million for making the last 16 if we can get into that top 8 position. If not, we can get to the playoffs. We can definitely get to the playoffs. I don't see us dropping down under position 24, not when we're in position 15 at the moment. It would be a travesty if that was to happen, and it would be a complete implosion of a enormous kind if that was to happen. And I think that people would then look at Brendan Rodgers with a different vein that they are currently looking at him. But that's not going to happen. I think that we've saw enough this Champions League campaign to think that we can at least get to those 2 extra games, which come with a cash value of 1.4 million each for those 2 games. So when it comes to it, we played Club Brugge on a Wednesday. Now, Club Brugge started off their Champions League with a game against Dortmund. Yes, they were at home to Dortmund and they got beat 3-0 from Dortmund. And their match day 2, they were away, Club Brugge, to Sturm Graz. Sturm Graz, who are currently, they're away down the bottom of the league, aren't they? Sturm Graz, yeah, they're 33rd position, Sturm Graz, and they've lost all their games. So they've lost 4 games, Sturm Graz. But when it comes to Celtic, sorry, I'll stick with Club Brugge at the minute. And then Club Brugge obviously won 1-0 against Sturm Graz. Match day 3 saw them go to Milan. And let me just do this. And there we go. We'll get that up on the screen for you so you can actually see. That's the Celtic one. Let's get the Club Brugge one up. There we go. That's Club Brugge. So you can see the scorelines that I'm looking at also, and their journey into the Champions League so far. So match day 3 saw them play Milan, and they got beat 3-1 in Italy. They also got a player sent off. And then match day 4 was an interesting one because they played the high-flying Aston Villa in Belgium, and they beat Aston Villa 1-0. That's at the halfway point. The next game up for Club Brugge is obviously a trip to Celtic Park. Now we can see that they haven't travelled. They got beat in Italy, but Celtic done a little bit better in Italy. They've got Celtic up next, and then they've got Sporting, and then they've got Juventus, and then they've got Man City. So ultimately, they've got a harder run-in, as they say it, in the league table than what Celtic do have. They'll be looking at Celtic as a must-win game. Celtic are looking at it as a must-win game. Club Brugge will know that if they can beat Celtic, they'll go from 22nd position and jump up the table. They are on 6 points, whilst Celtic are on 7 points. Celtic will know if we can win that game, if we can get the result that we want, it will take us up to 10 points. And if it was to stay just like that, we would be up to around about 5th, 6th position in the league. But we know that there is other games to be played. So, but what it does do, if it moves us up just a little couple of points, edging us a little bit closer to that 8th position that Aston Villa currently hold. Remember, Aston Villa were topping the table for the first 2 games of the Champions League. They even now find themselves down in 8th position. I think that Aston Villa, I mean, if they end up around about 15th, that would be a good Champions League campaign for them, considering they're not in it very often. Now, let's look at Celtic's run in the Champions League over the last 4 games. And Celtic also had an interesting start to the Champions League, winning 5-1 the very first game against Slovan Bratislava. And then matchday 2 was the game that I personally was dreading. It was a scoreline that I never thought would happen, but Celtic seemed to go into themselves the first half. Conceding 7-1 in Dortmund was not a scoreline that anyone expected at Celtic. We didn't expect to win the game, but we expected Celtic to do a little bit better than getting beat 7-1. We then travelled to Italy in the Atalanta game, and we knew that was a game that we must take something from. It was a game that I had predicted that we would maybe lose due to the fact that Atalanta were a team that got to the Europa League Cup final, and they got entry into the Champions League having won the Europa Cup last season. No mean feat that you say, reaching a Europa Cup final and winning it is something that Celtic didn't manage to do in 2003. So the fact that Atalanta did do that, you're thinking they were a good team, and I thought that that would maybe be one of the games that we would lose. But we fought out a hard-fought draw. Yes, we won the Moral Cup that day. And it was a fantastic result as far as Celtic are concerned, and for getting that draw in Italy, it gave us a valuable point in the Champions League, which then took us on to the next game at Celtic Park. It was RB Leipzig under the lights once again at Celtic Park, and that was a fantastic game. Celtic, I'd never seen Celtic so dominant in the first half in a Champions League game, and we ultimately won that game 3-1. That takes both clubs to the halfway point in the Champions League, where Celtic sit on 7 points. Celtic currently sit with the grand total of 7 points, and we are on 0 goal difference. We've managed to get our goal difference to 0, and the reason that I'm pointing that out is goal difference is going to come into it quite a lot in this campaign. When you look at the other teams that are sitting on 7 points, Man City are also sitting on 7 points, but they're sitting in 10th position because they've got a goal difference of +6. Juventus have a goal difference of +2, also in 7 points. Arsenal sitting on 7 points, they have a goal difference of +2. Bayer Leverkusen sitting on +1, they're sitting on 7 points also. And Lille are sitting on +1, and they are also sitting on 7 points. Below us in 16th position is Dynamo Zagreb. They are sitting on -2. So Celtic will know that if they can win by 2 or 3 clear goals, and I know it's going to be a hard ask against a top team in the Champions League, but we've done it before. But if Celtic can do it once again, if we can win by 3 clear goals, that will take us well up the table. Not only will it give us the 3 points, but the goal difference will make all the difference in this year's Champions League. So it's imperative that Celtic do win if we have any aspirations to hopefully try. And I mean, if Celtic were to finish top 8, it would be an absolutely crazy achievement when you think of what Celtic have done over the years in the Champions League and the way that it's pittered out towards the second or third game into the Champions League. But the third game, you know you're not going to qualify. This new format seems to benefit teams that don't regularly get to the last 16. It's made it a bit more of a level playing field. When you look at the clubs that are below Celtic, Dynamo Zagreb, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Benfica, Milan, Feyenoord, Club Brugge, Atletico Madrid, who pumped Celtic. I mean, so did Real Madrid in the last couple of years. PSV, PSG, Stuttgart, Shakhtar Donetsk, and RB Salzburg, Bologna, RB Leipzig, just to name but a few. I mean, these are teams that ultimately have done better than Celtic in the past few years. I think right now Celtic have got something good going on. I think that there's an absolutely fantastic good feeling about the club, and I think that there's an absolutely fantastic feeling about the fans and the way that the club is going. Long may it continue, and long may it continue to Wednesday night. Make sure you join us tonight, where I'm going to talk about the potential team lineups for the Champions League and what player will get the nod for the left back position for the Champions League game. Will Alex Bailly being brought back in for the Champions League game with his European pedigree coming through the ranks at Barcelona? This is the type of game that he was made for. But will Greg Taylor then get the nod? Greg Taylor, he was a bit off at the weekend. Some people were saying that he was pulling out of tackles. Maybe because he's got one eye on his next move. but you never know. Anyway, let's talk about that tonight, 8 o'clock Celtic Park time. Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure that you give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do, because we are trying to get to 20,000 subscribers. An absolutely fantastic amount of people that subscribed. It is a fantastic community that we do have here in the One Celtic Fans View, and it is a little bit of a family, just like the Celtic family is. Anyway, on that note, have a fantastic day, evening, lunchtime, wherever you are watching this, all around the world. And I mean that to every single Celtic fan and fans of other clubs that tend to watch the channel. Have a fantastic day.